Off we go. Okay. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. You hopefully know who I am right now, Deepak, and I've got the wonderful Prashant on my side with me today. So welcome, everybody. We're going to spend the first 5 minutes. If you know me, you know the drill. If you don't know me, we're going to spend the first 5 minutes allowing people to come in. Please tell us what country and city that you're from. Please tell us what occupation you're in. And those two would be absolutely fantastic. So we're looking for a hi, I'm Deepak from London. I run an SEO agency. Hi, I'm so letting us know where you're from. So hello, Ramesh, Billy, Chris, Mittul, Namrata, Abhinay, Sanjay. We've got a really exciting webinar ahead of us. This is my first webinar on Semrush with slides. Never actually done one before like that. So no pressure, Prashant. Breathe. But it's going to be really good. I've seen the slides. They're fantastic. So Anuj, you're from India. Come on, India's a big damn place. You got to tell us where in India. So Kochi from Kerala. We've got another digital marketing analyst. So guys, I said city would be ideal. Let us know. So Travis, hello Travis from Edmonton. You've got a small marketing company that you're running, Flight Plan Marketing, I presume. Anshuman from India. Let us know where in India you're from, my friend. We've got Vishek from Bangalore. What do you do in Bangalore, Vishek? Teja, Digital Marketing Associate. Where in India are you from, Mr. Teja? We've got Chris. We've got an Irishman on the call. I'm assuming you're Irish. You're from Mullingar, I think it was. Anuj, Bangalore. Great. We've got Teja, the digital. Oh, okay. So Namrata. You've recently started in digital marketing. Welcome, Namrata. Welcome. You're from Gujarat, I see. So guys, keep coming on in. Keep telling us where you're from, what you do. If you come here for a particular question that you've got in mind as well, feel free to start leaving the questions. Like if there's one thing that you could take away from Prashant's powerful brain, what would it be? What would you like to extract from him? There'll be lots of extraction here today. It'll be fantastic. So we've got Tamne from New Delhi, India. We've got Shanaz from Mumbai. We've got Hans from Mongolia. Hans, you're a regular good guy. Good to see you again. I think we've also got someone from Atlanta. So Scott, hello from Atlanta. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. We've got Joy from Mumbai. Fantastic. We have got more and more people that are coming in. You guys are coming in faster than I can actually keep up. So I'm going to take a breather and let you continue. We've got our first person from London. I'm excited. Let me know. Yeah, exactly. I'm in London. So Flo, I cannot pronounce your last name. I'm so Geroani, maybe. Flo from London. Where in London are you from? I'm curious. I'd like to know. We've got another Canadian, Mike, BC, British Columbia, Canada, in the house. I like that. Mike gets a +1 for the expression in the house. We like that. And we've got Paresh, who's just started with SEO and content writing. So, not bad. Flo tells me no, she didn't say not bad. She said not bad. So that was good to see. Guys, we're going to give it another, we're at the, so I don't know if you guys see it, but there's a live ticker mark that we have that says 3 minutes 43. We're going to give it another minute or two maximum. And then I'm going to give Mr. Prashant Bori an introduction. We've got, who else have we got? We've got Sanchal from Kerala, Kochi. We've got Matrix, Mr. Matrix, what's your name? We'd love to know your name, what you do out there in Nashville. Then we've got Jubarkas. I'm guessing that's your name, but it could be your place. It could be the place. I'm so sorry. But Lithuania, we've got our first Lithuanian in the house, which is brilliant. So we've got a really good international audience at the moment. We've got, of course, a lot of people from India. We've got Canadians. We've got a couple of people from the States. We've got a Brit. We've got a Lithuanian. We've got a Mongolian, of course. If you're not from any of those countries, I'd love to know if you're from somewhere I've not yet mentioned. Do let me know where you are. And Jesse, glad that you're here as well, my friend. Jubarkas is a city. So sorry about that. I'd love to know your name in that instance. And we've got a very cool rabbit actually for the Matrix tools, which I quite like. And we've got Sujoy from Kolkata. Right. I think I've said enough people's names to last me the entire webinar. I've got one more name for everybody. I've got one more name. Mr. Prashant Buri, welcome. We've got the CEO and founder of Adlift, and I'm really, really excited for the audience actually today, as well as myself, because, you know, Prashant has got over 15 years of experience in the SEO and digital marketing game, and he's going to be walking us through some really, really fascinating stuff. I mean, today we're going to be talking about ultimately some of his top hacks when it comes to digital marketing. He's going to talk about his experience of building out an agency. He's going to talk about what it's like to work with some really, really top tier companies, to include PayPal, Airbnb, and he's going to also tell us, being in the game for 15 years, he's going to talk about the things that he wish he knew 10 years ago. And that's always the question that everyone wants to know, is like, what would you do differently, sir? So he's going to say, well, you know, I'd be doing this 10 years ago with Deepak because he's awesome. At least that's what I say in my head. So Prashant, how are you doing?
Awesome. It's great to be here, Deepak.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. And the audience is super international. So this should be fun.
It will be. It will be fun. So guys, you know, please, as if you've just joined us for the final time, let us know where you're from. Let us know what your name is. Let us know what you want if you've got a question about the webinar. And from here, I know that Prashant is going to share with you something that he prepared earlier that is going to enlighten everybody about some things that they could do differently in digital marketing today. So Prashant, over to you, sir.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick.
So guys, just let us know if you can see the screen okay. Just say yes if you can see the screen just before we let Prashant lead the show.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm here to talk about the 5 power hacks. Although, you know, if we had time, we'd probably cover 15 or 20, but the 5 go-to hacks. If you're new into SEO, these are your go-to. If you've already been doing SEO for a while and you've not covered these, I would take that as key takeaways. Before I get into the 5 hacks, quick introduction. I've been in SEO and digital marketing for about 15 years, working across the board with F500s and startups. DNA is pretty much is SEO, so ex-eBay, AT&T, Yahoo, managing enterprise SEO and digital for these guys. And then we went on to sign on PayPal, Walmart, Airbnb, a bunch of other clients as we grew Adlift. You know, over the last 11 years that Adlift's been around, we've kind of worked with upwards of 250 global clients, some startups, some F500s, and a bunch of clients within the APAC India region. So with that, I'm going to start to share my 5 favorite go-to SEO strategies. So number 1 is you got to dive into synergies between paid and SEO. And, you know, if I had a nickel for every time this went wrong, I'd be a millionaire, right? So typically in organizations, we've got separate paid media teams, we've got separate SEO teams, or we've got separate SEO agencies and separate paid media agencies, which is fine, right? Those are 2 different skill sets, but they need to start talking to each other. And you know, I've kind of bubbled this up to number 1 because this is COVID times, right? This is where budgets are thin. We're kind of looking at every penny spent. So speaking, if you're part of the SEO team, it's critical to talk to your paid media guys, figure out what keywords were working, what are currently now working, what's the conversion rate, what's the spend. Those should be your, you know, money keywords, your go-to keywords, part of your overall SEO strategy, and vice versa, right? So if you're into Google Search Console and you're actually seeing a lot of traffic and stickiness with certain keywords, you want to shoot those over to your paid media team and make sure that they run their search query reports and it's part of their mix. So, you know, synergies between paid and SEO teams is definitely number 1. Number 2 is scaling interlinking. So this is Adlift internal data with Search Console for about 20-25 of our clients. And what we did here was we kind of we graphed out non-brand impressions with interlinks, right? So what you can see over here is there's a strong correlation between the number of non-brand impressions that your website would get with how strong your interlinking is. This one right here, up front, right on top, which has the most number of interlinks and also impressions, is a news site, right? So what that tells you is news sites typically do a really good job in interlinking. They're working with different interlinking plugins across their platforms, and it's kind of automated. If you're not a news site, you gotta like maybe work with different tools to get that in place. But it's very important to scale interlinking as you grow your website, because that's one of the key ranking factors for Google. Number 3 is one of my favorites, which is content marketing, right? It's hacking backlinks. Like, it's super important to understand, what's your current link profile and how do you actually grow that link profile with very quality links. This is data from, Semrush blog, which actually maps out Google's keyword position along with the number of backlinks across a varied set of sites that were analyzed. What we'd recommend is, using tools like Semrush to actually understand what's the quality of links that you're currently getting, right? What's new, what's lost, going after the ones that are lost. Maybe this is because it's a broken link, there's some changes that happen with the dev team, a number of different reasons for that, but winning those back and growing those out. Also outreach, right? So a lot of us are probably shy reaching out to high authority sites. When we kind of do competitive research, we figure out certain competitors have links from really high domain authority sites. I would actually put that pretty high when I'm talking about hacking backlinks, right? And at Adlift, we use our own tool, which is Content Lift, which helps us do this at scale. So if you'd like to talk more about how we do that, we're happy to dive deeper. But we've got about 20,000 publishers working with us on driving global backlinks. Number 4 is know your competitors, right? So competitive insight is key. Lots of times we're pretty much rolled up our sleeves and we're kind of getting into solving a lot of internal SEO issues without actually taking a breather and figuring out where am I currently, what's my benchmark, and that's something that at Adlift we kind of swear by. When we onboard a client, the first thing we do is create a benchmark report across the competitors. So we ask for about 4 to 5 competitors, and then we kind of use Semrush, for example, here in creating where are you, what's your percentage of SEO traffic currently, and the idea is to really grow that faster than the competitors to gain market share. Keyword position spread is another key metric to map. So how many keywords do I actually have in the top 3? How many are in the top 10? And am I actually growing this out, right? So when we kind of look at SEO, you might be growing SEO traffic at 50% year over year or 110% year over year. But is that because the search volume has increased for those keyword sets? Or are you actually taking away from your competitor, right? So benchmarking those metrics becomes critical. Keyword gap analysis, right? So this kind of segues really well into my earlier point, which was figuring out and hacking content marketing. So one of the big things about content marketing is what kind of keyword should I go after, right? What kind of keyword should I actually create content from? Again, this is the keyword gap analysis that Semrush provides you. Again, if you've not checked this out, I'd highly recommend it. Getting in, you can add your own website, you can add your competitor website, and what it spits out is very interesting data. So the first column the first call out here that you see is how many keywords overlap, right? So what's that Venn diagram looking like? And then what's the missed opportunity? So this is pretty much keywords that are that your competitors ranking for, but you aren't, right? What are you weak at, which is where your competitors do a much better job in ranking? What are you strong at? So the ones that you're weak at are your low-hanging fruit to create better content, to optimize that content so that it ranks higher. And lastly, right, is paid speed. I mean, this is super, super, super critical, guys. We're mobile first. We cannot ignore this. It makes significant difference when you increase your paid speed from a 45, 50 to a 75. And this is not only for SEO. This is across the board, right? So this would impact paid media conversions. This would impact direct, referral, all the different segments. So really working on paid speed with your development team, getting this done, showing them these graphs. There are other tools like GT Metrics, Kingdom, using that data points to really push forward the point that paid speed is not only important for me, the SEO team, but across the board, it's going to help everyone. So those are your 5 SEO growth hacks, guys.
I like the ending: acquire, amplify, and advance. Thank you for that, Prashant. That was really good. I think that there was some, some fantastic insights in there. Interlinking to increase non-branded impressions. Makes a ton of sense. I think page speed is not talked about enough. I think sometimes. I mean, it's there, but it's such a huge factor to central. I think to absolutely everything. And we've already had had a question come in, which was of course about the number of keywords. It's quite a good question, actually. When you're devising keyword strategy, what's your answer to the question, how many keywords are we targeting, Prashant? Is the question silly, or how do you answer that question typically?
No questions are silly. And I think this is, a common question that we get. And, the answer is you can't go after keywords, right? That's a short answer. Search queries on Google, 33% of search queries in a given quarter are new. So we don't know what people are searching for. It's all changing, right? And I think the common pitfall is, I'm a travel website and I wanna rank number 1 for hotels in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
that's not the way to go about it. What you need to do is your hotels for Las Vegas landing page needs to be so strong, its authority needs to be so strong that variations of those keywords plus that keyword, right, is something that you can rank for, right? So
yeah.
What our strategy would be is to build authority across landing pages. Of course, you need to track keywords, and there are tools to help you do that. Semrush is there; it'll give you longer tail keywords, but don't fixate on just a bunch of keywords. Obviously, you've got your money keywords, but it's the landing page that you want to really focus on. Make that really strong so that head, torso, and tail keywords rank for your landing page.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that that statistic, I think Anton just flashed it up on screen, about the 43% of searches being new, something like ridiculous like that, how fast the landscape is changing. So what would you say is the appropriate way to think about keywords, right? Because commercially people are going to have targets, right? They're going to think, well, my core keyword is still hotels in Las Vegas, Prashant. So do I not add the keyword, or do I, what do I do then, given the fact that 43% of searches are new? How would you go about that example?
So we definitely want to add that, right? Because that's where you want to see, you were not ranking in the top 100, you're a new player, you move to the top 50, top 20. So you need to kind of see that transition happening. So you need to track that, right? But what I'm trying to say is, don't fixate on 10, 20, 50 keywords, right, for a landing page. Grow it out, and it obviously depends on, the tool that you subscribe to. Semrush gives you a plethora of data. So track thousands of keywords, right?
Yeah.
And look at what's working well for you, right? Once you look at Google Search Console data, right? Then you can map 2 and 2 together. So I would say, and going back to my number 1 hack, which is marry it with paid media data, right? So speak to paid media folks, right? They've been doing it. They're actually getting conversion data, right? That's something that us SEO folks struggle to get, right? We don't have that. It's all hidden behind not provided. So I would say don't. What I'm trying to call out here is, don't restrict yourself to a number of keywords. Track them all. You can even segment them, right? So this is my primary. There's an enterprise client that we work with, and they've got this top 290, keywords, right? So don't ask me why it's 290 and not 250 or 300, but it's 290, right? That's something the executive team, right? And it's a publicly traded company. That's something the executive team gets their bonuses on. So SEO is actually, it goes up there. So you can't touch those. But having said that, they don't restrict you from tracking 3,000 keywords per geo location. So do that.
Okay. No, it makes complete sense. That makes complete sense. I think in line with a company's commercial targets. So we're getting a lot of questions are coming in, and let's go through some of them one by one. So we'll begin with ultimately some of these plugin questions. So Harsh Shah is asking about your favored tools for increasing page speed. When you're thinking about page speed, are there things that you turn to that you'd recommend people look at or consider?
Yeah, so I think Pingdom and GT metrics are two really good tools that we look at. Obviously, Google's page speed tool is something that you gotta adhere to, because in some way or form you're here to impress Google. That's Google's tool, so look at that. But yeah, I won't kind of overkill on the tools. Google page speed is a good tool to begin with. You want to cross-reference that with GT, that's great too.
Okay, fantastic. That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And then the other question that we've got here at the moment is Anuj. Anuj is asking about, so it's a good question. I guess the question is that when you think about the new searches, and there's lots of long tail variations, how do you appropriately factor in searches that are more specific queries, but they don't tend to have high search volumes? Like what should the focus then be on when you're trying to marry that balance, saying, well, hotel in Las Vegas is a top level keyword that I don't know whether I could rank for because it's quite competitive. So I look at the long tail, but then I'm like, well, I could spend 6 months ranking for a keyword or a specific phrase. I've got no idea if I'll even get any conversions for it. So what's the strategy here? Do I go after the big one and wait longer, or do I do a little bit of both? How do you kind of marry up what's realistic and what's achievable?
So I think the realistic part is you got to figure out, you have to know what your website or your business is good at, right? Now that, I think that's core. That's not like an SEO question to answer. That's a business question that you should answer, right? If you're selling high end expensive linen shirts, right? You're not going to go after online shopping. It's too broad. It's too wide, right? And it's not, you don't want to restrict yourself to white shirts, for example. You should start with white linen shirts. That's your core. That's what you do really well. Or different colors, or solids, or designer linen shirts, right? Go after. Now the search volume on those could be lesser than a white t-shirt, right? But this is what you do really well. And your product will speak to the conversion rate, right? And you start to rank for keywords that your business model is based on. You start to see conversions, and then you can start to invest on broader content, fill in top of the funnel, right? And then even if you're not selling that product, you can segue into what you're doing, right? So for example, I consulted with this is back in the day, a textbook rental company, right? Now, back in the day, textbook rental, it was very new, right? So nobody knew you could rent textbooks, right? So we were creating content on buying textbooks, because the rental keywords, we were already owning that, right? So we owned rent textbooks, right? After owning rent textbooks, we were probably in the first 2-3. What we found out was, okay, now that we've solved that, let's talk about why you should not buy a textbook. So then we started going after the broader buy, comparison, all of those keywords, and then started to fill that in. So start with what you're really good at, and then take it up the funnel. So sort of the reverse funnel, right? Your core money, start with your core money keywords, and then build out the funnel, not the other way around.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So thinking about obviously what you guys do that's core to your business, determining what those keywords are, and using that as a basis to then go and expand. You know, it makes a ton of sense, and we'll keep on. You know, we've got a really active audience, guys. So thank you for the questions. Keep answering, keep asking them, and Mr. Prashant will answer them. So let's go to Vaishak's question about effective So it's another kind of tool question, but it might be a broader question. Could you make some comments on effective interlinking? Do you use a plugin, or how do you think about your interlinking strategy to drive non-branded search?
Yeah, so there are a number of interlinking tools out there. Like suppose you're on WordPress, like Yoast, right? Interlink. So you could use that. If you're a publisher, right? But if you're, it again depends. Are you in lead gen or are you in e-commerce? There are recommendation engines, right? Product recommendation engine plugins which do the job of interlinking. Yeah. I think where it gets a little tricky, where you want to kind of maybe look at Screaming Frog, for example, is if you're an e-commerce website and you have a blog, right? The blog is your powerhouse to interlinking. Apart from all the different, filter interlinking that happens, recommendation engine, all of that, the blog is content, and within the content, when you have links, it's valued a lot more. So that's where you can actually run the blog on Screaming Frog for custom filters, right? Okay. So let's say I'm writing content on blue linen shirt, right? Or let's say the top 5 summer wear, right? Yeah. Top 5 winter wear. And I want to start linking to my core product. That's where you can use Screaming Frog to tell me, hey, I want to know for these custom keywords, show me where my content is that I've already written. So lots of times what we've seen is with clients is, they've written a bunch of great content, but they don't have any links in it, right? So this is legacy content. It's about 3 years old, 4 years old. Yeah, it's rich. It's got some history in it. So we run that through Screaming Frog for specific keywords that we want to rank for. It pops that up. We create a spreadsheet out of it and say, okay, this blog page has this keyword, which is your white linen, right? Yeah. Anchor text, link it to the product page, and we ship that out to the development team to go ahead and execute.
Fantastic. So guys, Screaming Frog, having a look at potentially if you've got legacy content or otherwise, and just studying specific keywords and then looking at where there's potential gaps in terms of your internal linking structure, sounds like a fantastic way to ultimately improve the internal link. So Vaishak, thank you for the question. So let's, it's great. There's lots of questions here. So the question that Ramesh Roy asks, so Ramesh, and it's a great question. He says that how can you differentiate once you hit perhaps a top 3, top 5 position, and everybody's maybe doing the same thing? Like what can you do differently perhaps to kind of break? I think the question's been asked in another form. I think Abhinay Donvasi asks, what works when you are in the top 5 and are aiming for the top 3 spots? So it's kind of a variation of the same question. What's your advice about people that want to break top 3?
So to move from your top 10 or top 5 into the top 3, you need to have content marketing in place. You need those inbound links, right? It's going to be really tough to do that without it, in at least my experience. So if you want to get into the 1 or 2, you need to do a competitive analysis for that specific landing page with your competitors, the ones that are the 4, right? Figure out how many links they're ranking for, what's the, how strong is their backlink profile, and then try and beat that, right? So if all things are same, right? If all things are same and equal, that's the way I would go about it. Now, if you're up against a Walmart or an Amazon, right? I would say do that, but then don't obsess on that, head term. You moved it to 4 or 5. Your landing page, your website stickiness, your page speed, all of that is going to help you move up with the content marketing. You've done a good job. Move over to other keyword sets. Start to get them up. right?
Yeah.
Because once you're already in the 5, start to do more content marketing aggressively. But there's a lot more keywords that you can go after that you're probably in the second page, and moving them up to the top 10 or top 8 would be money in the bank.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice, guys. When you're facing very, very well established competitors that arguably have an unfair advantage when it comes to the Walmarts, the Amazons, Wikipedia pages, whatever it might be, then I think that broadly you can analyze their backlink profile, but it's not the same thing to be an Amazon or an eBay or otherwise. So I think that the next question, as we keep going through them, and guys, keep the questions coming in. We of course had things that we were going to go through, but your questions are for us the most important thing. So I want to ask now. So you spoke a lot about content marketing and the importance of powerful content. So Hiran Mehta, straight after Ramesh, asked about when you think about developing a keyword or a content strategy with keywords, how do you kind of correlate those two? Because you said we're not going after keywords, or we're going after like 3,000 keywords. I'll be like, okay, so what do I start producing in terms of content then? How do you think about combining those two strategically?
Yeah, again, so it dives into scale, right? So obviously you gotta, again, so that goes back to my reverse funnel approach, right?
Yeah.
You wanna go after money keywords, right? So on day one, you can't be writing 50 content pieces a day. So you got to figure out what that threshold is.
Yeah.
And you got to map out that content strategy to the keywords that you want to move. So it has to be systematic in doing that. And then once and obviously create a content calendar. So figure out, what's the bandwidth, what's the size of the team. Are you doing it yourself? You've got a team of 20, content writers. If you've got a team of 20 content writers, then you can write maybe 100 or 150 articles a month. Or a week, and that gives you a lot more breadth of keywords that you can go after. But it all maps, so if I was to kind of draw out a framework, the first thing I would do is keyword research, obviously. Segment it based on primary, secondary, tertiary, or head, torso, tail, however you want to look at it. And then from that point on, your primary or your high search volume keywords would require more effort, more content. So skew it that way. And this again fits into the fact of, is that what you want to move, or do you want to move the lower search volume, right? So answer that question, start to generate content. Once you start to, so SEO is like going to the gym, right? If you're on, 1st Jan, you're like, you know what? I want a 6-pack, and I want to I'm going to hit the gym, and that's Jan 1st, and then Jan 10, you're not moving. You're like, okay, I'm done.
You look in, you're like, oh Jesus.
It's not going to work, right? It doesn't work that way. So but what works is if I go to the gym for like 20 days and I see some movement, right? Like whatever it was, I wanted to lose 2 pounds, 2 kgs, whatever that was, that adds confidence. So you got to make sure that your SEO adds confidence to what you're doing, and then you can start to scale that up in terms of creating content, backlinking, all of that.
Totally makes sense. I think it makes a lot of sense, guys. So, slow and steady is really the way you need to think about the content game. Mapping out a content calendar is important, in line with keywords, and having a strategy behind it. And, you combine this with the keywords you're going after, and you put some of those other things in place. I think it's, a really powerful way to ultimately, move your actual SEO needle forward. So let's keep looking at questions, guys. Keep them coming in. This is fantastic. I'm gonna go back up and see what else we have here. So, okay, this is. I think this is a really strong question. So Namrata Agrawal is asking, it's a question that often comes up. Like, how many times should you use a keyword in a piece of content? Is that the wrong way to think about a keyword? Does it become a point that it's spamming? How does it change when you write a piece of content that's like 10,000 words? Like, how do you start to think about, well, there's these long tail variations. My head keyword is hotels in Las Vegas. Do I keep using that keyword 57 times? How do you like to advise when you get asked this question?
So, the content that you create is the way I look at it is, the content that you create, if you were to come across it, you'd want to read it, right?
Yeah.
For whatever your reason. So let's say I want to buy insurance, right?
Yeah.
And that's that could be like a, not the sexiest product out there, right?
Yeah.
So the content is something that I want to engage with, right? So when I want to buy car insurance or I want to buy, life, or you gotta like you can't like obviously plug in health insurance like 50 times because you're gonna lose. The entire purpose is to have a conversion and stickiness, right? So you want to first create. You gotta ask yourself, would I read and consume the content, right? It needs to be consumable. That's what Google loves. That's how the algorithm works, right?
Yeah.
The days of keyword stuffing, unfortunately, are over, right? Freecreditcard.com, it doesn't work. It doesn't work it used to work 15 years ago.
Dude, my strategy, I have to change everything. What are you saying to me?
So there's got to be a balance. Right, so you got to figure out. I want to learn. I want to rank for car insurance, right? So you want to make sure you've got auto insurance in there. You've got car insurance. You've got, buy, all those keywords and risk. If you're writing maybe a, 1500 to 2000 word article, restrict that keyword to about 3 to 5 occurrences. That should be good enough.
Okay. So we're looking at, once to every 300 or 400 words. If you have to have a number, I know that there's lots of SEOs who say you shouldn't think in terms of numbers, but there'll be a lot of you mathematicians out there will be getting out your rulers or using Control Find and trying to figure out, well, how many times have I mentioned it? What's the keyword density? So, I think that's a really safe way of thinking about it, about, 3 to 5 times in a 1500 to 2000 word piece of content. So let's keep going through these fantastic questions that everybody's asking. Okay, so Namrata's was the last question. So Dimpy Devan, as well as I think Abhinay Dasvasi, are asking quite a similar question. The question fundamentally is, I'm a new business. What hacks or what can I do when I've got really established competition? If I'm trying to be my next local cab service and there's already local established competitors, how do I make a dent when there's already established competition?
So I think it goes back to a lot of the points that we've covered already, but I will kind of focus on the technical stack. If you're new, you got to sort that out first. One of the common pitfalls is, I got to get the business up and running. Okay, I'm going to spend a bunch on paid media because that's how I'm going to get quick traffic. And I'll figure out SEO. It's a headache. There's too much to learn, I'll figure that out, sometime else. What happens is over a period of time, you get addicted to paid media, right? Your margins, all of that get smaller and smaller. And then you wake up to the fact that, hey, I need to get SEO in place. But then you've got to now change platform technology. So the first and foremost thing to do is make your platform SEO compliant. That's super critical, especially when you're starting. That should be your goal one. Your technical SEO should be sound. You got to get GSC, Google Search Console in place. Make sure it's squeaky clean. There's no duplicate content. All of that needs to be in place. And then you start working across, the 5 hacks that I talked about, right? So if you're already spending money on paid media, figure that out. Figure out what keywords are working. Interlinking is huge. Paid speed, which goes back to your SEO stack.
Let's take a moment to thank you, Prashant. Shingora is giving us, a thumbs up. It's not every time someone says fantastic about an SEO presentation. Mostly they're like, oh, it was okay. I kind of got bored, but they're here. So apologies for the interruption, everybody. But I think that, when we're getting given credit, I like to gloat and to brag about it, which is exactly what we should do. So yeah, high five. Exactly.
High five.
So you're talking about your technical stack. Could you, for someone who's thinking, what the hell is my technical stack? What do you mean? Could you quickly kind of run through, these are the core things that you need to have in place when you get going? What is the stack?
So, the first thing I would do is get Google Search Console in place, right? And Google Search Console, you start learning it. Once you get that in place, you go down metrics of performance. So you see traffic, search queries, then you go into the errors. You start to see 404s, 301s. And if you don't understand something, there's the help section right there. You click through, they'll explain it to you. So get Search Console in place. That's your technical stack. That should be zero errors, right? There should be, it gives you mobile responsive elements. It gives you, are you blocking certain pages, robot.txt. So get Search Console in place, right? And make sure once you have Search Console in place, you're kind of going through each of those checks and balances to make sure that your Search Console is giving you a grade A. Okay. If I was to break this down, I would pretty much say your technical stack is your mobile site has high page speed. Elements are properly defined. There's no overlap. So make sure that's there. You don't have duplicate content issues. You don't have URLs that you're creating which Google doesn't care about, right? And I think that's key, because and that's where getting technical SEO becomes critical, because I've seen this a number of times with e-commerce sites, right? When they use platforms, the filters start to create unique URLs, right? So I'm in the white linen page, right? Now, if I start to say small, then it adds small. Then if I say price range, it adds a price range. And you're creating this huge URL that nobody cares about, but Google's crawling it, right? And one thing to think about when I kind of talk about technical SEO is every website is given certain amount of time from Google. Google can only give that amount of time to you, because it needs to crawl Amazon, right? Amazon and Walmart and these guys have built that credibility that Google's going to spend servers and server time on them. I'm not saying it's going to ignore you, but it's going to give you very little time. You got to make sure that the time Google gives you, it's time well spent for Google, which means don't make them crawl URLs that nobody's searching for, that nobody cares about, right? So the way you do that is you can go into Google Search Console, you can do parameter handling, or you can add canonical tags. Again, fits into your technical SEO stack.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fantastic advice, everybody. And when you're getting going in the space of SEO, then there's a lot of technical recommendations which by and large do originate by looking through Google Search Console and identifying clear and obvious errors. And if you're a business owner as opposed to a direct digital marketer, then you can pass some of these up to a technical team who could kind of work through a fair amount of them. So I think that's fantastic advice. And let's keep going through. So guys, we're at the 43-minute mark. We've got another 17 minutes. So get your questions in. I'm going to keep firing them at Prashant. He's got lots of amazing insights, which I'm learning a lot. I'm sure that you guys are as well. So let me roll back up. Let's have a look and see what else is being asked. This is an interesting one. So Chayan Khatri is saying Apple search engine is coming. What is? Let me rephrase the question. What is your advice when you get clients who start asking about what about voice SEO? What about Alexa SEO? What about Apple search engine SEO? What about platform-based SEO, whether it's Amazon or eBay? How do you like to think about SEO that's particular to specific platforms?
Yeah, so I think voice SEO is definitely something that I think I read a data point that it's voice is going to be, or it's close to 22% of searches today on Google. Could be higher, but that's kind of the range. So voice is definitely important. There's Alexa optimization that's happening too. If you've got your SEO already in place, right, and you've got bandwidth now to start working on voice and Alexa and all the different gadgets. I mean, I would totally go for it, but first get the house. I would say get the house in order.
House in order,
and then go after these elements. Now, before you even go to voice, right? There's and especially for all the folks, in India, where a land of multiple languages, vernacular is huge. Vernacular SEO is massive. So and that's something that we've seen with clients in India, where we spent a bunch of time on optimizing for English, but when we created landing pages in Hindi, there was no competition. And we're talking about roughly 500 million internet users, 550 internet users in India, and upwards of about 200, 250 are non-English. So that's that's untapped, right? And this could be true in other parts of the world also, right? Whether it's Canada, you've got 2 languages there. The US, you've got 2. So I would say go, you should go vernacular first before obviously going to voice. But absolutely, I mean, if you've covered the bases, go for it. That's the home run.
I think that's a fantastic way to think about it, guys. That if you are from a land where there's more than one language, people often default to English everywhere outside a few specific regions. But think about your native language. I didn't know that statistic about in upwards of a couple of 100 million who will be searching in Hindi, and naturally there's going to be far less competition amongst SEOs for dominating a Hindi-based keyword search. So do think about what that means in your local geography. So Abhinay is asking a good question. So this is in relation to paid and organic, and it relates to your point number 1, I think, that was on your actual slides. So the question is, like, can spending on ads and AdWords help organic traffic? And then how, and I think I've got a follow-up question to this, because it's a question that we get often asked. How can you separate the two when an SEO is trying to measure their work, but these guys are spending 50K a month on paid ads as well? So how do you think about the relationship between the two in a bit more detail?
So, the question that I saw come up was on the screen was, does paid help SEO, right? It doesn't. It's church and state, okay? Completely different. What has happened, or what you'd probably see is we've had startups saying, we had zero SEO, but then we started spending money, and boom, our SEO traffic started to go up. Now, in those instances, typically what happens is you've got Googlebot and you've got AdBot, right? Now, because your SEO is weak, right? Googlebot doesn't spend too much time. There's no interlinking, none of that. So it gets out, or errors, all of that stuff. But because you're spending money, Google gives you AdBot, and AdBot spends a lot more time and speaks to Googlebot. So that correlation would get you higher traffic. But if you're a startup, if you just started out, right, it has no correlation if you're a Walmart or an Airbnb.
Yeah,
you can't buy your way through. That's the only instance. If you're really new, you've just started spending, Google AdBot would send signals to Googlebot and say, okay, crawl this website, see if it can rank. It's not going to do a whole lot, but it'll be better than 10 visits a day, probably, right? So that's the only only correlation there. It's a misnomer to think if I spend more, I'm going to get more SEO traffic. That's not true. That's incorrect. Correlation between paid and SEO, like I called out, I think this was my first important point. Paid and SEO have to talk to each other, because paid media has your conversion data, right? So I know how much I've spent on white linen shirt. I know what the conversion rate is. I know what the time spent on the site was. I've got all of that data, right? And I can compare that with yellow linen shirt and blue and red and a skirt or whatever, like other products that I have. So I know which keywords I do really well in, thanks to paid media. So that's the correlation I would actually concentrate on working, is if you've got budgets and you can't wait for SEO, right? So take the help of PPC, take the help of paid media, of AdWords, to talk to your SEO team or talk to your SEO structure and optimize for that.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. So guys, I think that's excellent advice. Don't let's not make the assumption that paid is going to boost organic, or if it looks like it does, it's not the data that actually reveals what's actually happening. There's a distinction between the bots, and really the way to think about it is understanding what's the conversion data that we can feed back into our SEO strategy to help support that content calendar, the outreach that we do, and the keywords we identify as being meaningful from a conversion standpoint. So I think that's excellent advice. And let's, with that, keep going through. So that was this is great. So let's talk a little bit about the outreach process now, in the world of kind of building links. So I think Shravan Kumar says that he guesses that outreach for backlinks is the key. And what's your broad approach with how you would think then about backlinks and link building? Is there any kind of specific insights that you've got on that? You talked about a competitor analysis to identify where they're getting their links from. You spoke about that, of course, as being one of the key points about the competitors. Is there anything else that you want to add for that in terms of being able to dominate for keywords?
Yeah, so I think backlinks is in my experience maybe 40-45% of Google's algorithm, right? So you need to have a structure in place. Now there are a number of different ways you can do that, right? One is the webinar that we're doing, right, Deepak? That's helping with the backlink right there, right? So that's thought leadership, right?
Yeah.
So creating really good content. If you're selling a certain product, be good at that product. Talk about on digital magazines. Talk about that product. Become a thought leader.
Yeah,
I think that's a great way. That's a great way to do that, right?
Yeah.
So thought leadership is one. Competitive analysis, figuring out where competitors are getting links from, right? And then reaching out to folks and saying, hey, you know what, you guys cover this space really well, which is in the lighting space, right? And I do bathroom lights really well, and this is my product set. I would love to contribute, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta get. I think you gotta get innovative. Everyone wants content, but they don't want content that's already it's been there, done that. They want something fresh, right? So an example, one of our clients is in the lighting space, right?
Yeah.
And a product that they've had for a while is touchless, right?
Okay.
So it's motion sensor, and it's COVID, right? So we've been doing outreach with COVID in the mix, that this is cookie cut, this is cutting through the clutter, this is kind of technology that you want. It's a mix of two, and that's content that they're like, yeah, bring it on. We wanna publish it, right? So
yeah.
I mean, it's easier said than done, but yeah, thinking out of the box.
Absolutely, guys. I think that's fantastic advice. And the only one thing I'd add to that is if you're thinking about, well, how can I demonstrate thought leadership? It can begin on your own platforms before you migrate to others. Okay, so you've got a lot of people who know a lot less than yourself. Okay, you might of course come to Semrush webinars, as you should, for expertise. But if your client is a local plumber, then you probably know quite a lot more than your local plumber, and your local plumber might not turn up to an Semrush webinar to learn about strategic SEO. He might be like, well, that's what I'm paying you for, Prashant, or you for. So you can begin upon your own platforms and use that as a basis to start, introducing yourself to the world of thought leadership. And that can have a lot of knock-on effects. So guys, we're coming into the last 6 or 7 minutes. So I am going to start requesting, Mr. Baldy, that you answer the questions a bit quicker, because I want to start storming through the questions now. So guys, get your questions in. I'm going to ask Prashant to set a ticker, 30 seconds max if he can, to answer a question. He's given me the thumbs up. So basically, let's get into it. So Vinayak is asking very quickly, do you have any insights into ASO, app-based SEO, App Store optimization? Is that something you'd like to comment upon or pass?
Yeah, I would say, App Store optimization is a one-time thing. It's not like a ongoing. It's not ongoing because there's so many different factors in App Store optimization. It's like deletion rates, install rates, all of that's figured into Google Play and your App Store. So It's one time, do it, but don't obsess about it.
Perfect. Shravan is asking after that. He said, look, my web page speed score is 98. What shall I do with this whole AMP thing? What is the purpose of? He's achieving the same thing he thinks with his custom theme. Does or does he not need AMP? What do you think about AMP?
If it's 98, I won't think about it. But again, as you're scaling your business, if you're in the publisher space, you need, pages to load a lot faster on mobile phones. You've done really well. It's 98. If you've got resources and time, do it, and then forget about it.
Yeah, Shravan, you can come and speed up my site. My site's not 98, so come and teach me. Dhananjay Kumar is asking a great question. What's your thoughts on how to stay on top of the game when Google seems to be releasing an algorithmic update every couple of months? Like, what's your thoughts on stability in an era of many updates?
Just go after the basic foundations of good SEO, right? Technical SEO, get that right. Great content that you'd want to read, right? Thought leadership, getting good backlinks. Don't worry about something that you have no control over.
Yeah, perfect. Great question. Great answer. Then Vinayak Burshan is asking, what do you think about investing? Let me rephrase this question. So Vinayak is asking about SEO for local. How do you deal with the reality that you've got a very similar service that you want to institute across multiple locations, but the content or the service is basically the same thing? What do you do in instances such as that?
Yeah, so if it's the same city and if it's different cities and it's the same service, what I would do is, let's say you're doing this for 50 cities. I don't know how many cities you're doing it for. Let's say it's 50, but I'm sure it would be an 80-20 rule, right? So 5 would be your money cities. That's where you get 80%, or it might be 7. Figure out what your 80-20 is. For those 5 or 10, create unique content, right? Create as much unique content as you can, even though the service is different, but you can write it in different ways. There'll be testimonials that would be different. You can, there are a number of different plugins that you can add in there to make those pages look completely different. There's effort in it, but it's worth it because that's where 80% of your revenue is coming from. The other 20, or let's say, 40 odd pages, the content cannot be thin content. You need to make some changes to it. And I would say again, don't try and fool Google, because then you'd be worrying about when's the next algorithm update, right? You don't want to do that. So spend that time. Don't go live with those 40 pages. Maybe create 10 and then another 10, but make sure that they are significantly different, right? Yeah. Because you don't want doorway or thin pages. That's not gonna work.
Absolutely. Completely agreed. We've got a question from Lokesh Varan. I think it's Lokesh Varan. So you've got an SEO competitor analysis you're looking at, and there's all of this data that it pulls out. What are you actually looking for? What are the key metrics to look for when you're looking at a competitor?
If you're just starting off, I would kind of look at percentage of SEO traffic that your competitor is getting from you. That's one. And keyword position spread. So how many keywords are they ranking for? Do an overlap versus you, right? Those are the two benchmarks that are a good starting point to figure out you're moving in the right direction.
Fantastic. I want to ask you for your final. So guys, if you've asked questions that have not been answered, we apologize. You've got Prashant to Adlift. Google Prashant Bawdy Adlift. You'll obviously be able to find him and get your questions answered. Of course, you've got the Semrush YouTube channel. Anton's going to provide you with the webinar link. There's lots of other places you can find some amazing content. But I would ask you, Prashant, to give your final kind of piece of advice based upon something that you wish that you knew 10 years ago. What's the final piece of advice you'd like to give to this very evidently active audience of SEO practitioners? What's the one thing you wish you knew?
So the one thing that I wish I knew was the client is not always right. Right?
Ooh. Drum roll.
That's the one advice, which means, if you're a brand yourself, if you're working with folks, the overall goal is to move the graph in the top right, to go upward. So if as an agency, if I feel that I'm not in sync with what the client is saying, you got to give pushback. If your senior leadership is not in sync with what you're saying and you're pretty confident about what you're talking about, you should be able to give pushback because your goals are aligned. At the end of the day, if I don't increase traffic for my client, he's not going to say, hey, you listen to me, why did you do that? I hired you to drive traffic, right? So ultimately, evangelize SEO. If you're an enterprise, you got to evangelize. That's 75% of the battle won, because there are huge product roadmaps. If you're a startup, start SEO from scratch, right? So make sure your framework is in there. And yeah, I mean, this is a very young, this is an extremely young segment to be in, SEO. It's about maybe 15 or 18 years ago. Google IPO'd in 2005, so maybe give another 1 or 2 years before that. There's no bachelors in SEO, right? This is all self-learned. The more you read, the more webinars you attend that Deepak hosts, the more informed you're going to be. So keep learning, right? All the information is there. Keep learning, testing, create test websites for yourself. Learn from that. I mean, that's my 2 cents and word of advice.
Prashant, the audience, thank you, everybody. I even gave it a bit of a slam. Thank you for all of your advice. I think it was fantastic. As we can see from everyone's comments, we really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you staying to the end. Prashant has, given so much amazing information. So message him, hire him, all of that good stuff. And meanwhile, keep coming back, of course, to Semrush. I'll catch you on the next webinar. Prashant, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Deepak. This was fantastic. Thanks for having me.